Okay, I think we're on.
Hey Karthik.
Hey Vinod. Hi guys, if you're joining us on Periscope or via YouTube on our channel, welcome to Free Wheeling Fridays. So this is a new concept that we have come up with. Basically, what we wanted to do is remove all the friction in interacting with potential investors, founders, and other ecosystem players, and to get their view on the latest topics that may have happened in the past week, or if you have anything to aid, just any comments that you want to share, you can always do that. So the whole idea is to make it freelancing. So if any topic under the sky is up for discussions. 1 hour, we will just share some of our views on some of the things that we are, seeing um, from the last week in the startup ecosystem, right? Having said that, we are taking your comment on both Periscope and also on YouTube. So if you go to our Twitter channel, you should see it. And then on YouTube also, we can take comments from you guys, right? So feel free to put your comments here, and then we'll try to address it. And the other interesting thing is we will have some surprise guests joining us from time to time. So the whole thing is designed to be, a very open, sort of an unstructured session, right? So anybody can join at any point of time. If somebody wants to, join the discussion, or just leave a comment, either on Periscope or YouTube, and then we'll try to get you into the conversation. Vinod, you want to add a couple of words there?
No, I think that's Karthik. I just we just want to keep. I think people have been doing a lot of webinars, and I think it's starting to get not so easy on people. So we thought let's try something simple. Let's keep an engagement going, and that's how we've come with this new format. Hopefully we'll be able to engage a lot more people with this format. And we just share what's happening on the ecosystem, and feel free to drop in your comments either on Periscope or on even on Twitter, and we'll be happy to take if you have any questions or anything that you really want to discuss. Yeah. So Karthik, maybe we should start off with now that you are wearing your white hat.
Yeah.
So,
So there is a significance for this hat,
yeah,
wearing this particular white hat
yeah,
for this session, right?
yeah, yeah.
So let's just talk about it, man. It's on everybody's mind. Obviously, quite an acquisition, right? $300 million. What, less than 20 months, 18 months,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think the founder Karan mentioned in an interview on CNBC that the annual revenue run rate was like $150 million, right? That's like it's almost like $10 million of new ARR every month that the company has been operational for.
Yeah.
uh, First thoughts, Vinod. What do you think?
No, I think it's a massive game changer for the venture industry. I think we've all seen this size outcome. It's not that we've not seen before. We've seen free charge in the past. We've seen Mintra of the similar sizes, I would say. But I think this is, as the industry is spoken about. The fastest. 200-300 million in the tech space, in a vertical space, right? I think it sets a benchmark, which is going to be hard to beat for some time to come. I think that's what makes this transaction, life changing and career changing for a lot of people involved in the transaction. I guess So I think congrats to Nexus, Omidyar, Karan and the team, a phenomenal transaction that shows exits are possible in this industry, and there is we need a lot of these 100 mil, 200 mil, 300 million exits, and not that we have to keep waiting for our unicorn exits, right? Which are as rare as unicorns, are even rarer than that, right? So I think these exits paved the way for a couple of things, right? One, it gives liquidity to VCs. Two, it also gives liquidity and creates a new set of angel investors, right? And that means this money can go back into investing in new startups again. And it also proves that over the last 15 years the VC industry has been built in earnest in India, and these exits start to prove that this is a market which will also start giving you exits. I think it augurs well for the ecosystem, and obviously there are doubters in the ecosystem. Karthik, how did this happen? I just 150 million ARR. 2x of the transaction. A lot of people have been asking, why is that? Just 2x. What does it mean, right? I mean, you want to throw some light on that? You want to take a shot at that?
So actually, Vinod, there was a couple of things that I was thinking, right? Like one is obviously the space has really, heating up with this COVID situation. Right.
Yeah.
The other thing is also like the staggering numbers the company has. Obviously, these provincial numbers coming from the founder. We whatever public information that we got available. It shows that this is like even before the COVID happened. This is something that is really really sticking, and there's a lot of takers, right? So that's truly innovative, right? When I'm sure when they have first floated the idea, people would have, I don't know how many times they got rejected before somebody bought the idea, right? Also, interestingly, I was just doing a little bit of math, right? While you were talking and just assuming that, these guys, a total of $11 million has gone in, right?
Yes.
And let's just take it for 2 years, right? In fact, it's not even 2 years. It's actually just 1 year since, less than a year since their Series A, right?
Correct.
So the IRR comes to at least 215%.
It doesn't make sense to calculate IRR, at 18%, Karthik. You do it for like longer periods, and this is like craziness at some level, right? In terms of multiples, on 11 mil invested, you just make multiples on just the cash invested itself, right? That's like craziness, and the founder per se, is expected to make close to about $100 million. With that kind of number, right? It's staggering. Founders have made more than that in the past, but I think this is for a 300 million transaction. Founder making 100 million is pretty significant.
But why do you think only 100 million?
I'm just roughly assuming the founder was holding 40-50% of the 30-40% of equity. I'm just making that assumption here. It could be more, could be less, but I'm just making a rough math. I think it'll be up north of 125 million to 100 million. That's where my math is kind of indicating.
I was thinking, given the second round happened quite quickly, right? I think the first round, the seed round happened in April 2019, and then the Series A round happened in November of last year or October, somewhere around that. So it's just like 6 months. So I assume that the founder has diluted fairly less, and I think the round was also led by internal investors, if I'm not mistaken. The Series A round also.
Yeah.
So I assume maybe they did not dilute anywhere beyond 33% or so, or maybe 40% at the most. So very interesting nonetheless, very exciting. Obviously we need a lot of these things we needed in our ecosystem, right?
And Karthik, look, this is a cash transaction, right? We've seen a lot of M&A in the past, where it's not a cash transaction. When a cash transaction is happening, typically non-cash transactions are at a discount, or you get stocks in another company, we don't know the liquidity, and this is like a complete liquid transaction. And I think that's why, the surprise question of saying, if the company is doing 150 million ARR, and why is it that, it's got acquired for 300 million, right?
Exactly.
One is its cash, and I think it's the companies are, good time when companies are bought, not when they are sold, right? So this is a case of, the company being bought. My sense is, it's a case where the company was in demand, and that's some rough numbers that at least, what we hear is like, because if it's at 150 mil ARR, I mean, I think we should decode this ARR bit for people a little bit.
Correct.
The ARR is like, like in cricket, right? You would have seen run rate. So that means, if you are at a 4 run rate, in 50 overs, you are likely to score 400, right? I think this is exactly like that. What is your revenue at any point in that particular month, and you extrapolate it by 12, and that's your annualized revenue. Not even, I wouldn't even call it recurring revenue, simply because recurring means there is an element of certainty that the revenue will come next month.
Right.
So I think ARR in the recurring sense largely, was supposed to be used in the SaaS industry, where there is predictability and there is a subscription between it. But I think people have started using it across other industries, and I think then there's a confusion between, is this ARR, is this annualized recurring revenue, is it average recurring revenue, average retention ratio? There's so much that's going on. Or is it AR Rahman at the end of the day? Right? People talk about that. I think we should just clearly say, look, this is annualized revenue. You take the revenue in a particular month and up it by 12, and that's 150 million. That means the current revenue in July, let's call it July, should be about 12.5 million revenue for White Hat Junior, and that's like up to now 150 million into 12, which is from a revenue to math multiple, right? I think that might actually be pretty good, even it's a cash exit. Instead of looking at as an ARR multiple. Not everybody gets an ARR multiple easily, at least at an exit point of view, right? So I think that's gotten factored really well in this case. Yeah,
and Vinod, also, while I was just reading this up a little bit, right, I also looked at what kind of customers are, on using White Hat Junior. I know we have one amongst ourselves who uses White Hat Junior.
Yeah.
But then I also saw that a lot of these parents are actually proud that kids are learning coding at a very early young age, and they actually want to brag about it. They want to publish it. I've seen a lot of parents posting on Twitter and other social media, just showcasing some of the things that these kids have developed, right, using White Hat Junior.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting concept, right? But do you think this is like a winner-take-all sort of a market now that White Hat Junior has come and showed that there is a market here? Is there room for more companies to come in this space?
I think I think it's like in a way it's a behavioral question, right? I think this requires understanding of one, the parent's psyche more than the kid's psyche at this point of time, right?
Yeah.
Multiple factors have kind of contributed to why the coding wave is kind of taken off, and we see this large acquisition that's happening.
Correct.
I think kids are at home, they're not going to school. Parents want to make sure that they are engaged in something useful potentially for their life, or also, I mean, just like, all of us are seeing the noise around, Flipkart becoming big, or, the tech being really large, and the stories that's going around, right? I mean, aspiring parents, right, in our generation would have looked for, oh, I want my kid to be a doctor, I want my kid to be an engineer. I think maybe, this generation wants somebody to be a Sachin Bansal, somebody wants to be a Baiju Ravindran, right? How do you get to Sachin Bansal is, by going to college and learning coding, or getting to know coding. And do you want to get to college to learn coding, or can I learn it even before that, right? That seems to be the conundrum, or, that seems to be somewhat, the Indian parents thinking, okay, let me push the like I mean, I've heard this story in Andhra or in Kota, right? People start learning, getting to IIT, because that was like a wave, right? You want to become an engineer, and or you want to become a doctor, and that was the direction. So I think this new generation, parents will push kids to become, you become next Sachin Bansal, yeah, start learning coding. You can build something out of this. I think that's slowly starting to seep into the people's mind, and actually, it is not even going deep in at this rate, right? We're talking of like the first 50 million Indian people. That means that's like about, let's say, 10 million families asking their kids to learn about learn coding. I think that's where it is at currently. Yeah, yeah. And that's the change. I think aspirational need for a newer life skill their kids want to kind of learn. Karthik? Hey Bhargavi, can you hear me? Hey, so here's our surprise guest, Raj.
Hey Vinod.
Hey Raj. Welcome to our first freewheeling session, man. Good to see you. Yeah, I can see that you are looking like this coder who's been in his den and woken up out of that. Actually, right on spot that you joined us now. We were talking. What's happening, Raj? You should know this better than all of us, right? What's happening? Why do kids want to learn coding, man? What's happening?
Five and
So
a half year old.
5.5-year-old Bhargavi's son is learning coding on. Okay, I wouldn't want to brand name it, but yeah, the kid is learning coding, man. What's happening?
so I think a few years ago when I was teaching school kids, it was pretty much like a very niche thing to do. Like we used to use MIT Scratch to teach kids how to drag and drop blocks and code. Back I think parents were aware of what coding was because of everyone had some or the other relative working at one of these IT giants, so they knew कि हाँ coding में scope है, job मिलेगा, engineering this that. I think mid 20 mid last decade, coding went from being like this thing for working professionals to being more gamified, being something that kids could toy around with. Right? It was not only some. I mean, toys were not only physical, but soon moved on to our screens. And yeah, I
Like
think
Lego
I will.
Window.
Yes, like Lego, the Scratch, right? There was total programming, and I
Yes.
think in the name of category creation, right? Like you all have gone from being, my kid wants to become an IITian to why don't you become Sundar Pichai or Bill Gates, right? So it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to see that what people could learn on their own, right? Like previously, people had to learn coding. They had either had to go to a class somewhere. All YouTube videos were largely meant for adults, right? Like YouTube coding videos are largely meant for adults. But this new wave of one-on-one attention, right? Like with promises that your kid will get sharper at other things. Coding is
Mm.
like a vehicle to get better at maths, right? Like who wouldn't want their kid to score higher marks in maths? That's like every Indian parent's dream, right? So I think started as a vehicle to get results elsewhere, and now it's become like category of its own,
A
right?
Yeah.
basic logic building. It's
Yeah.
another way.
Hey, Raj, I have not introduced you. Maybe I don't know what to introduce about you, man. I'm just saying, I mean, because you are currently what you are. But what would you call yourself as? I mean, how would you introduce yourself now?
I don't know. I think like I'm a serial tweeter at this point of time. Right?
I was lost. What do I tell? Co-founder something. Previous company, but I think you're a serial tweeter, and you kind of understand what's happening. You understand the pulse of people that's happening at your age way better. And we were all surprised, this has gone even below your age now. We'll see the next generation, not, on Twitter, they'll just have a coding platform. They'll write some code and send it to you directly, looks like, yeah.
In fact, one of the other interesting phenomena that I've been observing in the West is around this platform called REPL.it, right? REPL.it. The idea is very simple. Like to set up a coding environment on a laptop is tedious, right? Like installing Python or installing whatever Node.js it stops a lot of people from starting to learn to code. So the brilliant thing that REPL.it has done is that it just spins up a developer environment in your browser window. And the cool part about it is the awesome community of teenage coders that has built up around the platform, right? The REPL.it forums are probably like they're like the hunting grounds for every passionate builder who will end up launching some of the interesting product in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm pretty sure like there's a lot of firepower in that kiddo community. So,
Right.
so yeah, it's pretty much gone beyond like my age as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll throw this at Bhargavi. Bhargavi, since your kid is learning coding at 5.5, right? Will the kid turn out to become Raj eventually, or what are we looking at? Like, if kids are learning coding at 5.5 now.
See, I don't look at it as coding, right? So we have a Lego Vido at home, and that was my exposure into that logic building, how they have structured the logic in the Vido. So here I'm just trying to see if that logic building can be taken to a more structured fashion and nurtured from this young age. That's all I'm looking at, not looking at him learning Python or whatever languages, right? So that was my approach when I uh, coaxed whoever is the institute to take him at 5.5.
Interesting.
I-
Yeah.
And also like a good form of due diligence, I would say. Right? Like,
Well, no, that he's subject to many startup evaluations which we do.
Yeah. So Raj, if this is happening, right? And you also talk of communities and strongly involved in building communities, and you talk of passion economy, right? Does this lead into something even faster? Like we've heard of this kid, raking in millions of dollars by just doing unboxing videos of stuff, right? I mean, if kids are going to learn code at like whatever 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? What does that mean? I mean, passion economy comes in even earlier. No more passion; it'll be kids economy, man. We'll all become jobless at some point then.
I think one interesting aspect of this is, and something that I have not personally looked into, is gaming. Right, like it's a massive ecosystem. People build a lot of like. I mean, when I used to game back in college or as a school kid also, people used to build a lot of maps for Counter Strike, skins for characters. Right, I think I have personally seen kids building games of their own, right, and launching it on MIT Scratch's platform ecosystem, so to say. So there is quite a possibility of kids understanding economics, right, by indulging in coding and using it to develop things like games, right? I think there's definitely a big economy there, right, that I am pretty much oblivious to. But as I say, things which start as toys, right, end up becoming like empires, business empires of their own. So maybe there's a new wave happening, and I'm already feeling the FOMO, right, like to
Are
10,
you,
10 16-year-olds.
no, are you hearing people saying, okay, I want my next $100 million, I'll make it in the next 18 months? Are you hearing that?
Yeah, I in fact had someone like DM me saying that, yeah, like, hey, I have an idea for $100 million, startup. So it's already become like a meme. I guess from the time of Redbus, I think that was one of the biggest acquisitions, like $100 million acquisition back in the day, right? From there on, we've come a long way as come a long way as an ecosystem to seeing this. And it's very interesting that most of this action is happening in edtech, right? It's internationally, if you look at it, like in the US ecosystem, especially, uh, people pretty much request others to not start up in edtech because it's such a slow sector, or it's a sector that doesn't go anywhere. As in India, we're pretty much on the other end of the spectrum, wherein like fat valuations, exits, money is changing hands, like in edtech more than anything else. So yeah.
Great, Raj. Raj, just one other thing that which has come out this week, and there's been like a little bit of not talk of the town, I would say, something which has gone under the radar is like RBI saying, look, startups can get priority sector lending. Does it mean something? Startups will get access to capital. Maybe Bhargavi also, does a lot of finance. She interacts with startups, right? Is it time to take advantage, Bhargavi, on that? Do you sense something, on that? Or there's a startup also which can take advantage, can build something on that, on priority sector lending?
In terms of if we have to see whatever regulatory changes are coming in, right? I think we are yet to see that wave of startups who use the government framework or infra and build on top of that. There is a push for forex also, right? And like UPI or like account aggregator, other frameworks are also coming in. Plus, we already have bills exchange, right? Bill discounting exchange. Now, this is another thing which is coming. So, I think from regulatory side, they are also trying to promote lot on easing the credit availability for small, micro, and startups. I think the way I have seen it now, first movers are some of the old generation folks or old generation enterprises which have proximity to the regulatory folks jumping onto the bandwagon pretty quickly than other startups, because you need some probably level of being ahead and being having some access also, maybe sometimes, to pass through some of the approvals. So I personally believe we are going to see a wave of startups which are trying to use this infra and putting wrappers on top of that and creating a solution. So I'm waiting for more fintech infra solution kind of players coming in.
And I think as a founder, like the one thing that I've learned is about how scary debt can be in early stages, especially when you're looking at building a venture backable sort of a hyper growth startup, when the risks of success are anyway stacked against you. Of course, banks are not willing to. I mean, I remember a time wherein I tried asking a bank for a credit card, and they were stunned. Right? They were like, "Who's this kid who's asking for a credit card on a company account, like a very new company?" Right? So that day, I learned that okay, whatever bills have to be generated will have to be on a personal liability sort of a basis. And going on, I think it's a very important lesson, right? I think a good test of a business, actually, the strength of a business, an idea, is whether or not you're able to convince an investor who knows their game to put money against equity in your business. So I think I would say that if anyone's trying out to do anything that has an element of risk, in a big element of risk involved in it, there's no clarity on where the money is going to come from or when it is going to come in. Do not go ahead unless and until you have someone who has experience putting in money, having the confidence to put in money into what you're doing, right? Like taking on debt is not the most favorable idea, because it's not like debt is cheap in India anyway. Right? So yeah, like either do a good old business wherein you know where the money is going to come from, right? There may be a cap on how much you can make out of it, but either do that or just iterate till you find something that you can get a very smart investor to put money on. So yeah, that's my take on debt
Yeah.
capital for Indian young founders, especially in India.
Yeah, but I think it opens up, and at some level, I just feel, I mean, RBI doing priority sector lending for startups, it just shows that the government is like looking at this as a large story. It's no more like any more a side story. The startup story is, it is getting mainstream.
Mainstream.
Yeah, it is getting mainstream. You're getting, actually treated better than other industries at some level because, the risk levels are much higher. Like in agriculture, if somebody has to depend on weather, right? Um, Here we are also dependent on so many uncertain situations in startup, right? So the government recognizing that and according it, priority lending status means a lot, I think, for the ecosystem per se, right? I think we'll wait for details, but I think it is something I feel in the right step. People who come out of these coding courses will get some loans also. Hopefully, the government will just directly facilitate. Another fintech player will come and facilitate, saying, "Oh, you finished this level, get it PSL, man, by priority sector lending." I'm just joking here, but yeah, I mean, all that's possible. I might be
I,
joking, but you
I
never
think
know.
it's more likely that the startup who's teaching coding will get access to lending so that they can lend money to parents to sort of get their kids to learn coding.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, we'll start something, Raj. Why don't you passion economy? Whoever is on the top scores, right? Why not lend some money? Build a game. Maybe something like that happens. Is the next
I,
step.
I think I think that is a jokes aside. I think that is a serious market, right? Like with more and more kids getting onto smartphones, and I think what coding has done is it's normalized kids being on a computer, right? Like 5 years ago, if when I used to teach, parents would come and say, "Hey, my son is spending a lot of screen time on the computer. Like, how do I restrict that?" And we had to actually say, "No, no, they're actually learning something. They're coding. They look at the games, look at the logic that they've been using, right?" But it's interesting to see a way wherein parents are now paying to get their kids on a sitting in front of a
I,
screen.
I think it's not only the coding institutions, but COVID also helped a lot, right? Because online education became quite normal now, and that's the only option available, right? And there was so much lobbying which went from parent teacher organizations to convince the government, I think, also to let this happen for younger kids. So then as a parent, I think, okay, 1 hour anyway he's spending in online school, why not another 1 hour once a week or twice a week to learn something as well, right? So I think the COVID also probably helped in a way.
And I think the NEP, which has just come out, I've not gotten time to go through the nitty gritties, but I hear a lot about how it is also, made a push for programming and other things in the curriculum. Now, of course, like at the end of the day, it's about implementation on the ground. But the government putting a word will definitely increase the market, right? It will legitimize the whole field, the space. But I'm sure a lot of people are going to use it in their marketing. A lot of startups are going to use it in their marketing campaign,
Mm.
and parents are also going to understand that okay, the government is making a push for coding in schools. Maybe I would want to be a step ahead and provide it for my kid because yeah, the private sector is. I mean, parents are earning well, or even parents are not, right? Like I think there's a lot of trust in the private sector the when it comes to education in India, right? So yeah, it, I think from that point of view, we will only see more coming up. So I think the other interesting development today has been that Topper has put out the School OS product, and it is very interesting to see how fast you know the whole show has panned out because of COVID. Right, this
Mm.
was selling to schools was like a well-known nightmare for edtech startups. No one would dare to
Yeah.
sell anything to schools. But now schools are pretty much begging for solutions. Yeah, it's
No, I think yeah, I just see that like with my kids' school also, right now they're just scrambling for solutions because people they were not adopting to tech. Now any old. I think suddenly tech has been kind of forced, and with online classes, payments of fees, everything is kind of changing. I think demonetization helped in one. Movement moving towards cashless, I think COVID has been even more, because the fear is not about getting caught now. Fear is all about, getting the virus, right? If I exchange money, right? I think it's taken it to the next dimension, what even demonetization couldn't do. And everything is just going online. And a lot of people keep talking about um, what should have taken us a decade or half a decade, right, is happening in like months and 6 months, right? The change is like absolutely visible. And school at some level is starting to look like daycare, right? When I look back, right, I mean, the kid can learn on your own given a little bit of hours. It's more daycare, I think. It's more like, parents want their time rather than kid really wants to learn much in the school. So I think that's a very drastic change, and if it's visible in terms of results, right? What has happened to these kids is they miss out on socializing. I think which is the biggest life skill in some level, right? You want to socialize with your peers, with teachers. You want to make some decisions. You want to take some risks. I think all of it gets lost in a way. So fundamentally, I think college or school will remain. There's not going to be a change. I think even once we get out of this COVID situation, I think what might change is how we learn is going to kind of change. That's what I keep thinking. What is it going to change? And maybe a kid goes to school for 5 hours, 6 hours, and after that, the kid will really do what it wants to do. And parents will be more than happy now to say, look, learning is beyond classrooms. But school is for daycare, pseudo daycare, if you will, and plus, a socializing skill that kind of gets developed. I think that's where the schools are getting to, in a way.
so. And also, I was curious to know, as a parent, how long do you think this anxiety, this fear will last around COVID? Like, it's not a switch that we can unfortunately turn off. Even with vaccination, that's a distant sort of a possibility at this point. How long do you think this whole
I
dance
think this
around
year
schools
is
will
wiped
follow?
off. This academic year is wiped off almost. Already in my son's school, they sent an email till December. We don't expect physical classes to start. So, but I know from that industry point of view, it's been a very, very difficult year, right? Because they have been operating at a fraction of the cash flow which they generally get. So, yeah, it has affected a lot of people that way.
And the other thing that I think not many people are talking about, right? Going back to the good old buzz around IITs, BITS, NITs. Uh, the entrance exams have not yet taken place for any. I mean, most of these national multi-location, multi-center entrance exams have not yet taken place, which implies that the admissions have not yet started. So, I think this week is when colleges would ideally start, opening up the NITs, BITS especially, which is not yet happened, right? And I don't know. They've not yet like washed their hands and said we're calling the year off, right? And since the whole structure is rigid, the academic semester is a well-defined period of time. They were running on cycles since I don't know eternity.
Hmm.
The first semester, second semester, time durations are set in like stone, right? I wonder whether they're going to write the year off across colleges. If yes, what are millions of students in India who are expected to go to colleges? I mean, at least a few lakh of students who are, so-called bright students who are supposed to go join the top tier colleges. I don't know what they are going to end up doing. They're going to go to a local college, that too remotely. Are they just going to take a year off, take a gap year, I think there's so much uncertainty just out there.
Yeah. Rajan, I
It's
think,
like,
yeah, I think a lot of unanswered question on the COVID times. I think, right? Yeah, but I think there's also exciting stuff that we get to see right now, like what we've discussed so far. I think that's been something amazing in the middle of all this. We are seeing deals being done, M&A is being done. We've seen this acquisition of White Hat Junior by Byju's. I think that's brilliant. I think, one side, we have the story going, and I think uncertainty is going to exist. I think we've covered quite a bit, in this session, from talking about, coding for kids, how priority sector lending is going to help in that process a lot, right? Um, Great, Raj. Thanks for joining us, man. Being our surprise guest. Look forward to having you more again on surprise.
thanks, Vinod. Thanks,
Hey,
Kim.
thanks, Raj.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here, man.
Yep. See you all around.
You, man. Bye bye. Take care.
Great. So if you guys are just joining us, we just had a quick conversation with Raj, one of our surprise guests. Stay tuned. You'll probably get more guests online. If you want to speak up, just let us know. You can leave a comment in Periscope. We are live also on YouTube. You can just comment on the YouTube videos, and we will be able to take your questions. Right. With that said, I think that's an interesting freewheeling sort of a conversation we just had with Raj, right?
Yeah, we pre-wheeled so much. You think the wheel would just fly off at this rate, Karthik?
Yeah. That's the whole
Good,
point of
Vinod.
this
I like it.
new format. It's very unstructured. Just go with the wind, right? Wherever the wind takes you, just go with it. But if I may, bring you back to the RBI thing, right, Bhargavi? Let me just put you on spot here. Do you think this will fundamentally change anything for early stage startups? And how soon do you think would this be a significant factor for startups raising funding?
The priority sector.
Correct.
Even when all this lockdown started, right, when the credit was eased, some of the friends who are in banking sector, the information which I got was on ground. The way things have percolated and changed things on ground was very different from what we hear. So I think it's going to take some time for real benefit to go to on ground, because banks have to digest this. They have to put in place a lot of processes. So many complexities would be involved in implementing this, right? So I think in terms of big shift, it's in my personal view, it's not going to be immediate. It may take its time, and this may go through a couple of iterations. But as we were discussing earlier in the day today or yesterday, right? I think there are some industries which might have to rethink, like venture debt or startups which were focused on giving credit lines to other startups or other early stage companies. So this can sort of disrupt those companies. And I'm sure they are already thinking about risk mitigation opportunities, because the whole business was grounded on the fact that banks are not going to look into this. So now if banks are forced to look into this, so I think these are the specific companies which could get fundamentally changed.
Got it. I think it's an interesting point that you make, right? Venture debt may change in the near future, maybe a couple of years down the line. We'll see good competition coming from traditional banks. But this is also like a space that traditional bankers don't necessarily get, right? This is like very, very early, so there are no assets for them to apprise on. It's going to be interesting how this is going to turn into.
Exactly. So that's what on ground, when I said on implementation, this is exactly right. As you said, fundamentally, the way they evaluate companies or a proposal would have to change if
Correct.
this has to actually get implemented on ground.
Right. Do you think there will be specialized we have an agri focused banks. We have
It will happen.
yeah.
Yeah, because already I know some of the new age banks, private banks, have a vertical which is focused on startup lending,
Hmm.
right? So it's already there, and they try to get people who know the space little better than traditional bankers, right? Because here you need a mix of probably banking and the other ecosystem aspects of a startup, right? You probably your network should be very different. The way you will do a lead sourcing, evaluation, diligence, everything has to be very different, right? So I have seen some of the new age private sector banks building teams which are more suitable for startups, the background of people and stuff like that.
So I think it'll be yeah, Vinod, go ahead. I was just going to ask Vinod if venture debt it's still very early in India, right? For venture debt, I mean, beyond the big three venture debt funds, there are a few that have open shop. I think maybe this is a question that I should probably ask of Rahul from Trifecta or someone like that, right? It's still very nascent, but I think they paved the way, right? I mean, can you imagine like a traditional bank or an NBFC focusing on startups with coming in with some equity kickers? I think that would make a good story, right?
So I think that's the challenge as Bhargavi was also talking, right? One is, so since it's priority sector lending, right, that means the interest rates and there is possible subvention that the government can provide, all these factors, it's like you're going to get it at a lower cost than what venture debt guys are currently providing, right? So for the first challenge for the existing venture debt guys will be like, how do I be the first lender in a way, right? Compared to this traditional bankers, the real, I think we may look at it as like one getting slightly pushed out, but I think my sense of that, right, because the traditional private sector, public sector banking don't have an expertise on that, right? They'll rely on the venture debt guys to leverage their experience. Maybe they'll do some kind of a partnership also, in the initial days, before they develop expertise, right?
Yeah,
I
maybe
mean,
they can be LPs into these funds.
maybe, exactly. So
Yeah.
that could be potentially possible, right? That opens up the floodgates in some level, actually,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So I think like what we are talking now. I'm sure the venture debt folks will be like discussing, how do we capitalize on this? What are the pros and cons?
We should try and get one in the
Right.
next Friday maybe and have a conversation.
Absolutely. I think I sense, venture debt guys will also see a disadvantage, but also see an advantage, that's like right visible, frankly, right? And some of the bigger banks, I'm very sure, right, they'll set up their venture arm stories right away, like big banks, HDFC or an ICICI,
Right.
SBI, right? I think they'll be like, okay, this is a mandate, let me do a venture debt kind of a model. I'll meet the priority sector lending. But I don't know if they can get an equity kicker. Again, it depends on regulation. Because is equity allowed in that kind of a model? I think we'll have to wait for finer print. It's I think definitely worth another conversation with bringing in some venture debt folks as guests and kind of decoding that and bringing that priority sector lending approach. We should do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got our homework for next week, right? So this is a very interesting topic that we should dig a little bit deep into, right? Also, I think there's one more interesting acquisition that has happened this week, right? We talked quite a bit about MyGlam. Actually, two acquisitions happened, which are very interesting for us. But the one that I'm alluding to is the acquisition of Popixel by MyGlam. It's just put out on VC Circle just a couple of hours ago. What do you think? It's very interesting, right? I mean, it's very natural, no, Bhargavi, for them to team up.
See, I have very controversial comment on this, so I'll let Vinod go first.
Yeah.
But yeah, Karthik, you keep asking us question always, right? And you were literally not present when we discussed White Hat's acquisition.
Yeah.
And me and Vinod, we are parents, we have kids. You still are lucky to not get into this boat yet.
Yes.
As somebody who's looking all these things as an outsider or probably not in the same situation, what do you think of this entire wave which is going on? I was very interested to get your views on this.
The wave on coding
Yeah,
started.
generally,
Yeah.
starting coding from the age 7, 8. The entire wave.
Yeah, it just reminds me of someone's tweet this morning I was reading, right? They were like, it's so funny. It's in Hindi, so I'm not gonna give it to you in Hindi, because my Hindi is quite bad. But the gist is that, when we were growing up, right? Like when people from our generation were growing up, our parents would say, "Beta, learn math. It's very important for your future." But now parents are saying, "Beta, learn coding. It's very important for your future." So I think this is a really interesting sort of a development in our society, right? And it shouldn't be really surprising to us. Parents are really concerned, like, the skills that the kids acquiring from the school, are they good enough for them to land a good job? Gone are the days when people aspire to work for the government, obviously, but also even for companies like Infosys or TCS, right? Now everybody wants to work for the Googles of the world, or the Dream Elements of the world, if you will, or Flipkarts of the world. And people are looking for their kids to acquire those skills. And the traditional schooling system is obviously failing. They're not able to come up with a scalable solution, a good approach, that will set the future path for these kids. And it's a clear market pull, and just an amazing story all around.
I think, Karthik, no one, just to add, Naval, right, would have influenced this so much, right? Like by saying build, right, build something all the time. I think parents are like, at least like half of them who follow him would be like, I need to make my kid to build something. What do I make him to build? Is like to try and get to coding, right? In some sense, Naval has turned out to be like this generation's Gyani.
Like coding Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. So that has a great influence on how our society is also I wouldn't say manipulated, but what we are aspiring and what we are doing, right, is got a great influence from those kind of stories also, right, happening.
Right. Hey, guys, I
Yeah,
have.
and I think the education policy also says um, from class 6 they are probably going to include coding as part of curriculum. That is a very interesting thing, which is going to really be beneficial or for good for this industry,
Yeah,
in my view. So I think it's like world conspiring on this.
like all the stars are aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we got a
Um,
question from Sanchi Kurana. Okay, I'll just read it out. Would love
sure.
to hear your views. Thanks, Sanchi, for the question. Really appreciate it. Interesting question. Would love to hear your views as parents. So that's obviously to you, Bhargavi, and on companies like White Hat, Coding Ninjas, etc.
Yeah, Sanchi, hi. So we actually spent the first 15-20 minutes just discussing this without taking names, right? We don't want to specifically pinpoint and discuss on one or two companies, but I gave my view. I have a 5.5-year-old, and he's attending coding classes currently from one of the organizations. So the way I looked at it is, it's not about coding per se. It's about, will it help in the overall logic building, overall thinking process of the kid, and can you help the kid get attuned to some of these skills from a very young age. So that is how I looked at it as a parent, and I enrolled him.
I'll take a different view. I'm not enrolled yet, but I have FOMO, Sanchi. That much I can tell you. So as soon as possible, right, I'm going to enroll my kid into, the coding lessons. I'm just holding out, for some time, and I will enroll her, I think, at some point in time.
Yeah, who knows? Vinod will probably enroll in one of the companies which is close to us.
Yeah. Thanks, Bhargavi.
So, nice way to punt the original question that I asked, Bhargavi. I was asking about topics of
Yeah,
acquisition.
I think
So,
so. What Bhargavi made that escape with the comment. So I think I'll put it this right. I will say it as it's a phase where we're going through the COVID. You will see different things happening. You will see this crazy acquisition happening. There will be like positive tailwinds, and there will be companies, which will find it hard. But it's also a phase where we'll see, a drastic amount of consolidation across companies that will happen. So I think both good and bad are happening, as a part of this. You see, I think it's only natural that's happening, and I think we should not shy away from that. Is expected to happen in some form or other. So some of the companies will happen. It is a part of this whole story. I think it some amount of consolidation is going to kind of happen as a part of the COVID impact. Without any specific companies, we should expect that consolidation to kind of happen. Yeah.
So is this the way forward for content companies? There was a wave of content companies which got funded, like a few years ago, right? 2 to 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the clear path here is obvious, which is content in and of itself is not going to be enough. There has to be a commerce element to it, right? So
Yeah,
at some
and
level, go
I'm
ahead,
also
Bhargav.
seeing a trend of, I at least know personally, couple of companies which were either positioned as platforms or as content companies coming up with their own brands. So
Yeah,
again, this is another element of commerce, right? So it need not be a platform play, but
correct.
it can be your own brand play also.
Like a
Uh,
private label.
yeah, so it's like it is probably, I wouldn't call it as a pivot, but I think it's riding on whatever they have built as a brand for themselves in the content, and coming up with their own brands in the same stable. So that is another trend which I have seen. So I saw one company doing it and I thought it's one off, then I saw another company doing it. Now I'm waiting for more.
So this is like, I think if you look at US as a market, right? Like Glossier is probably one of the first companies which has successfully demonstrated this, right? Like do the content part and then get a lot of followership, and then convert them into a private label and do commerce on it. And it looks like Indian market is also trending towards that. Um, Great, guys. I think I've discussed a lot of things that were on my mind. We have a couple more minutes left. Anything that you guys wanted to discuss?
No, I think nothing specific. I think good first session. Really, I think we are doing a freewheeling session. I think it will get more exciting as we go along. Is my stance, and we should kind of stick to a schedule every Friday, 6 p.m. And I think it'll be more fun as we bring in more guests
Yeah.
and unravel a lot more ideas and insights. That'll be great fun for the ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell a couple of things for viewers, right? So we are also learning, and as Vinod said, it will get better as we move along. So bear with us, and it will just get better. So even if you don't like today's session, drop us a message, or if you have any suggestion for improvement, tweet to us or email us, and we will be happy to look into that.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate all the people who joined us live and all of those who asked questions. Look, I mean, this is a freewheeling conversation, right? So please feel free to butt in anytime. We will see you guys again next Friday. Until then, have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye, Karthik.
Bye.